We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Welcome to another edition of AVRant. My name is Rob H. I'm your host this week while Tom is away, so I'm joined by...
the very healthy and not sick at all Lee Overstreet, pinch hitting again for AVRant, and I love it.
Lee, this is your first appearance in 2018. Welcome back to AVRant.
Yeah, it's fun. It's kind of exciting. I've been beating my head against the wall with audio issues in my little office studio here, so I'm just happy that I can speak through this microphone and you're hearing it, and things are recording, and life continues. But boy, I know listeners to this podcast know about getting headaches, literal headaches, and stomach aches from audio and video issues.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, sometimes people write questions to us about that.
Yes.
But before we get into all this, first of all, I want to say, hope everybody in Tom's house is feeling better soon. There are many sick individuals, which is why he's away this week. So hope that everybody has a speedy recovery. And I want to send out a huge thank you. Huge. Thank you. We needed 1,000 subscribers to our YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/AVRant. We needed 1,000 subscribers to stay in the YouTube partnership program by February 20th. We hit 1,000 subscribers.
What? Hey, when did it hit?
Gosh, that was back on like Friday, I think we actually hit the 1,000. It might have even been Thursday.
Did you know who the 1,000th was? Did confetti spew out of something?
I'm pretty darn sure somebody wrote in to say that they hit the 1,000, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I forgot. I know John was the first person to alert us to the fact that we got to 1,000 subscribers. I don't know if he was the 1,000th or if he just noticed it.
So somebody out there is the viewer of the week.
It could be.
The viewer of the week as opposed to listener. Yeah.
Since we were saying so, it might just be like a fake email account that got us to 1,000.
I'll take it.
We're fine. Honestly, everyone, thank you so much. That kind of support, it means the world to us. Now we get to stay in the partnership program. We don't have to lose any of the features we wanted. Side issue, we get to monetize the videos. I think we make a whopping like $12 a month or something off of that. I don't know.
That's more than most people make off YouTube. That's $12 more than I've ever made on YouTube.
I'm pretty sure that's all just because it's like on YouTube Red and those people actually subscribe. I'm pretty sure that's why. But anyway, that's the fantastic news. We're super happy about it. Let's get into the show a bit. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And to get to questions answered, all you have to do is ask.
That's it.
And you ask by sending your question to question@avrant.com. That's our email address. That will go to our producer, Austin. He helps fill out the topic list every week. So question@avrant.com. You can also reach us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/AVRant podcast. You can come to our website, of course. That's avrant.com. You can leave a comment there. You can also donate to the podcast there if you'd like to. There's over on the right-hand side a support the podcast with a little cup of coffee logo. So that's another way you can help out if you'd like. And yeah, I already mentioned our YouTube page, youtube.com/c/AVRant. And if you want to reach us individually, Tom is tom@avrant.com. I'm rob@avrant.com. And you can find us on Twitter. He's at avrant_Tom. I'm at FirstReflect. And our producer, Austin, is at Austin Pond. Austin is spelled with a T-E-N, not a T-I-N. Austin also has his own podcast. It's called We Watch Movies. With a name like that, who knows what it's about? Well, Lee knows what it's about, don't you?
Yeah, it's vocational classes for people learning to fix combustion engines. I mean, it's really neat. I learned all about a clutch watching recently.
I don't know much about a clutch.
I didn't know how the pressure plate was attached to the spring behind it and what kind of material the friction plate is made of. That was fascinating. And I mean, you wouldn't think it from the title, but that's the kind of stuff they talk about.
Yeah, we watch movies.
Yeah.
Very descriptive. Lee, folks can find you on Twitter as well. Where would they find you over there?
They can find me at Lee Overtweet because I'm silly. And I'm not even going to say where I am in Instagram. I just like the fact that some listeners found me there anyway.
Yep. Just remember, Lee likes puns.
See if you can tease out what my Instagram handle is if I'm Lee Overtweet on Twitter. So it's not terribly difficult.
That's right. All right. Let's start by thanking our listeners of the week. We want to thank our supporters on Patreon. It's very cool. You go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, and there you can sign up to do a recurring monthly donation. Basically just like a subscription, except you get to choose the dollar amount. The minimum is $1 a month. That'd be $12 for the entire year. But yeah, right now we got 53 patrons. Huge thank you to everyone who's supporting the podcast that way. Really nice to see that that support there. And yeah, as I mentioned, you can come to avrant.com and support the podcast directly through PayPal. You don't have to have a PayPal account. You can just use a credit card, or of course, you can use a PayPal account if you want to. And sometimes people support the podcast in a non-monetary way, and they let us know. Alex P did just such a thing. He mentioned us to Accessories for Less, SVS, Silver Ticket, and Acoustimac.
He thought he was getting coupons or something because he said that, right? He's saying it. He's going to the grocery store and mentioning AVRant just in case.
Well, why not? We'd take it. But yeah, just in case you couldn't tell, he went on a little bit of a shopping spree, and that'll be coming up later in the show. So huge thanks, Alex. Really appreciate those mentions.
I like the 53 Patreon donators, but it's a little intimidating. Now I feel like I have to put on a paid level of entertainment. You know what I mean? Now I'm like HBO on here.
I'm pretty sure that folks signed up for our regular show, and that's how it's going to stay. So
I got to get like a makeup artist in here or something. I got to design a lighting concept. People are paying for this.
Well, let's get into the news. There's only one news story today, so Lee, why don't you start us off with that?
All right, sure. Via listener Marc, Marc spelled with a C. And I used to know a guy named Marc who spelled it with a C, and he called himself Marc with a sexy C. So, yeah. Rather than trying to fight the trend of people watching movies on their phones, the makers of Poptheatr, which is spelled where they leave out that next to last letter, kind of like Flickr and every other brand name in the world now.
Easier to search for. Search engine optimization.
Poptheatr decided that what people really want to do is lie flat on their backs, put a black bag over their heads, and have their phones suspended above their faces by elastic straps. It might look like a joke created by The Onion, but it's Kickstarter, and it's real, and people are funding it. So clearly, it's the wave of the future. Now,
yeah,
I mean, sure.
Okay, folks, you've got to come. If you're not looking this up, you've got to come to YouTube and see the image of what this thing is.
A black fabric cylinder, a couple of feet tall and maybe a foot across, and you lay back and you just sit this thing over your head, and it's got a cutout for your neck. Yeah. I just jammed my elbow into my mic stand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Man.
Oh.
I can't feel my pinky finger right now. God.
Well,
never hit anything that hard before in my life.
Oh,
I gotta
wow.
Gotta quit gesticulating so hard. Oh, please come back, pinky finger. Anyway.
Oh, so dear.
That's the Poptheatr thing over your head.
It is. You recover. I'll describe how you can collapse this thing so you can carry it around. And my goodness, Lee really is in pain over there. And it does come.
That's bad.
With like a Bluetooth speaker. So you connect the Bluetooth speaker, pair it with your phone, and then the phone and the Bluetooth speaker both like hover above your head, held in by a strap. It's a very silly thing. I actually looked over on Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter funding thing has ended, and they did not reach their goal. So
really,
maybe it won't really be coming. But,
I'm so enraged by the ridiculousness of this thing that I smashed my elbow. Yeah. Well, now see, what I want is to actually suspend a turntable over my head so I can see the record spinning. That's when I'm in. I'm totally in when you suspend vinyl over my head and I can watch that spinning.
The guy who does Techmoan, he did review that was it RokBlok, which is like
yeah that thing was awful.
The thing with wheels and phono needle, and you sit it on your vinyl, like you lay your vinyl record flat on a table, and then put the RokBlok on it, and it drives around it.
Yeah, it's like your stylus is going around the record instead of the record spinning under the stylus. And I mean,
just like the old little VW bug player. But yeah, that review was like you could get rid of all commentary and just listen to the poor thing trying to play a record. That is
That's all you needed.
Hilarious video right
all
there.
you needed to hear was that. Oh my God, it's so funny. But yeah, I saw that, loved it. So there you go.
That's some good stuff.
You know, hey, just one word of advice, people. If you want to watch TV on your phone, you can buy one little cable and hook it up to a real TV. You don't have to hang the thing over your head in midair inside a black tube. Just plug it into your TV. It's a little, what is it? It's the mini HDMI connector. I know that my phone, I can't remember, what was it, MDL, something like that? There's like a little connector.
MHL?
MHL. That sounds right, yeah. And so, yeah, you can plug that in, and it's HDMI on the other end. You just jack it into the front of your receiver or TV or something and just press play, and maybe don't hang a bag over your head.
Well, before we move on to our comments, Lee, we want to catch up with you a little bit. I mean, you know, first time appearing in 2018. What's been going on over in your neck of the woods?
Oh, well, let's see. We had sad bits. Little puppy dog passed away. You remember the dog I used to always have to run and walk?
Your wiener dog?
Yeah. Little buddy was, his name was Rudy, and he was about 19.
Yes.
And so
I know he it's not as though it was a completely out of nowhere type of shock type of thing given his age, but still very sad.
It was very sort of I was taking care of him to a great degree there toward the end, but we're all good now. It was totally expected, and so we're just trying to decide whether we like the no dog life or we need to hurry up and go get another wiener dog. So we'll see.
I'm pretty sure another little doggy's going to be in that house.
But eventually maybe. I want to see what it's like to have a summer where we can travel and not have to get babysitters, you know, and not have to take a dog to the grandparents' house. But anyway, we'll see. So, you know, R.I.P. Rudy, he was awesome. But in happier news, I finally, after years of threatening to do so, I've started to do my video archiving project at home. I've got just, buckets like the under the bed plastic storage containers.
Oh, yes.
Right.
I have many of them myself.
You can put about 30 VHS tapes in those. Okay. And I have 5 of them. Mm-hmm. And then I've got all these VHS tapes, and I'm holding one up for the camera for the people who are watching on video. And for each of my VHS tapes, I'm so OCD over the years, I wrote down exactly what was on the tape.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And what time things start. So I'm crazy, but I can separate things into segments there. And then I've got tons of 8mm. I've also got high 8, if anyone remembers that format.
I do.
And Super VHS, I got a couple of those. I even have a tiny collection of about 5 VHS-C, which I just got done doing, and those are a pain because they're very fragile and delicate and 20 years old, and they just barely go in the adapter.
The adapter's not so easy to find anymore.
Right. So that has been a heck of an experience, and I think a lot of people listening, I hope, would be into something like that, and in the future, maybe I can go in depth with it and tell you exactly the kind of decisions you have to make. Basically, if you want to do it yourself, you can always send these things off, and there are people who would do this for you. But I can't. I'm too OCD. I'm too much an AV nerd. I have to do it myself. And my goal was, I want all my home videos where if a relative comes over, if I just want to see something from the past, I can find it in organized folders and play it on the big TV.
Yeah.
And enjoy it like that. And so I'm getting there. I've got my JVC Super VHS VCR. I'm actually weird. I have 2 of them. I bought one in '98 and one in 2004.
Not bad to have a backup now.
I got to, because, it's really hard to find. Like, they're one of the best, right? It's fantastic. And it's a good $500 on eBay if you're trying to find one used. So I'm very pleased I have that. And I've got my high 8 camcorder, and I've got a box from Matrox that they don't really support anymore, but it's perfect for this. The MX02 Mini. It's a capture device made by Matrox for doing exactly this, and it does high def. And so I'm done with all my high definition HDV tapes. I did my low definition DV tapes. And I'm plowing through my 8mm and VHS, and it's been quite a thing. And let me tell you, if you think you want to do this project and you have a bunch of these tapes, something to consider. There is an emotional, psychological effect to this process. Number one, I get stressed out when audio-video things aren't perfect, right? So I want everything to be perfect. But number two, there's something weird about seeing so much familiarity from so long ago and then having it hit you how long it has been, and there are people you don't want to see, and there are people you miss that aren't around anymore, and there are like animals you miss, and then there's events you forgot about, and so like you'll start to get confused about how old you are and like what's going on in my brain. It is an interesting process to go through. I've seen some videos that I forgot about. I can't wait to share things with people. I used to do a radio show, so in the future I want to make a retro podcast about the old radio show.
Hey, that's a great idea.
So imagine I have high quality recordings of every show on audio, and then I've got video of a good many of them and a bunch of band performances and stuff like that. So imagine a show where two guys in their 40s try to get together and do a show about their old show. And that's kind of where I'm going with it. So I got a lot of plans, and it's been really fun. If anybody wants to hit me up at that @Lee Overstreet Twitter, you can direct message me, and I'll give you my email address if you want to talk about these sorts of issues, because my wife's sick of hearing about it.
Well, I mean, it's archiving your history and your memories.
It is.
So yeah, that's
it's
important
really
stuff.
neat. And it ties into just before we went on the air, I told Rob that I got my ancestry results back and found out I'm incredibly British, like 84% British Isles and Ireland. That's me, man. So gonna do some family tracing and share a bunch of videos. It should be really fun. But
Nice.
It's stressful. It's weirdly kind of pleasant, but also stressful. I can't explain it. It's a combination of feelings about this.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that that project is moving along. Again, very sorry to hear about your dog.
Oh,
but,
he's okay. But so many tech issues, I can direct my attention toward this stuff and not the missing wiener dog. But
very good.
It's been a couple months. We're okay now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's crack on. We've got some comments before we get into the questions. So, let's see what our listeners have to say.
All right. David F. said he's using a home theater PC running Windows 10 and PowerDVD to playback Blu-ray disc. He still enjoys watching 3D on his 135-inch projection setup. Yeah. And he also enjoys Atmos. That makes sense. He was trying to watch the Warcraft movie in 3D, but the audio would only play in stereo. The 2D disc worked fine, and he got Atmos audio with that. He double-checked that the 3D disc also has Atmos, and it does. He thought maybe it was just a problem with that particular disc, but since we didn't get to his question last week, he had time to buy a different movie, Ghost in the Shell. I need to see that. To test things further, the problem is the same. So some restriction with PowerDVD where it can't do 3D and Atmos at the same time, maybe, right? Then he found a forum post, and this is how you answer every question in the world, is a forum, right? I've done this a million times. He found a forum post that said, this happens to me too. What I have to do is switch between PCM and non-decoded HD audio 2 or 3 times, then it works. Okay, so David played a 3D disc, and with the movie in progress, he switched output to PCM, back to lossless bitstream, still got only stereo, then to lossy bitstream, and got Dolby Surround up mixing, then back to lossless bitstream, and ta-da, bingo, Atmos. So the forum solution worked, kind of. And the issue is definitely a PowerDVD software error of some kind. That is strange.
I mean, is that not like the ultimate turn it off and turn it back on again solution?
But it wasn't even, it was like switch the settings and then switch them to something else and then switch them to something else and then go
like
back.
While the movie is in progress, no less, which is not what you would intuit.
So you're sitting there screaming at your TV going, Atmos! And it goes, what? Atmos! What?
I mean, the issue is if you're using a computer to play back actual physical Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, PowerDVD is now your only option as far as official software. Otherwise, you'd have to rip it and play it back with something else or play it back with a non-official piece of software, which would more than likely get rid of the menus and things like that. So if you want to do it all officially, PowerDVD is the only game in town. So hearing that it has this problem with 3D discs, that's disconcerting. However, at least it does function, which means hopefully they'll update it eventually.
But does this mean at the beginning of every movie you got to sit here and essentially do the equivalent of jiggling the handle on the toilet?
If it's a 3D disc, because he said his 2D disc worked fine, which of course is the vast majority.
Right.
But for whatever reason, something going weird with the 3D files. But
so it's like, put your glasses on, everyone, and hang on for about 5 minutes. Let me just tick, 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 tick. Okay. I had a related problem where I'm using VLC on a notebook computer to play out the notebook computer's HDMI output into my receiver, and it's only sending out stereo, even though I know the file has 5.1. So I've got to check VLC's settings. I have a feeling it's probably in those settings. Maybe it's something on the computer, but I'll find out eventually. But I know the feeling. I didn't try just like changing settings 6 times in a row to try. Okay. Michael M. shared a very detailed video by German studio Grobi TV about the Denon AVR-X8500H and 13.1 channel Oro 3D. In the video, they mentioned the free Oro 3D firmware update is expected around May 2018, but they also touch upon other expected updates and upgrades. So, They mentioned that DTS is working on an upgrade to DTS-X and the DTS Neural X upmixer that will allow it to use 13 speakers, just like Dolby. But the Denon representative says not to expect it within 2018. It's a ways away.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's definitely a ways away, but at least they're working on it.
Okay, so they know it's a thing, and they're going to get there eventually. They also have no firm date for when the HDMI 2.1 upgrade will be available, but they expect it's more than a year away. HDR10 Plus is not supported, but that's because no official specs have been made available to them yet. So yeah,
That's a good reason.
And since the HDMI board can be upgraded, it's possible, at least in theory, to add HDR10 Plus support in the future. And they said they already support the Dolby Vision mode that is necessary for Sony's X1 Extreme TVs. X1 Extreme.
Yes, right.
Extreme TV. So there you go.
Overall, yeah, these were some details that I hadn't heard before. I'm interested in pretty much anything to do with the X8500H. I think that's a very compelling $4,000 AV receiver, but hey, 13 amplifiers built into the darn thing.
And isn't this bringing back your beloved wide?
It is bringing back the beloved front wide speakers.
Man, when I heard that, I was listening. I felt so happy for you.
The front wides do not get utilized by the Dolby Surround upmixer. And if you use the DTS Neural X upmixer right now, it can use the front wides, but it's limited to 11 speakers total. So you can't have everything. And until that DTS Neural X upmixer gets updated to be able to use 13 speakers, which is not going to happen in 2018 according to Denon, but hopefully eventually. So
when the Neural X upmixer does use 13 speakers, will you then kind of have it all?
Yes.
Oh, man, we got to have like a wide audio party. You know, everybody go to Rob's, and we're just going to like listen to the widest mix ever.
2 people come to Rob's, because that's how many other people other than myself can fit into my theater.
All right, we'll take turns walking through,
That's right.
you know, 1 or 2 at a time, like visiting some special memorial. Okay, let's move on down, and I guess we'll post a link to that video that talks about all that. Jack R bought a TCL P-Series TV recently, but he wanted to compare its image to a Sony X900 model to find out what he'd think of a more expensive TV. Sure. He wanted to compare them at Best Buy, but naturally the TVs were in torch mode, of course. He asked the obnoxious employee, I know at least one Best Buy employee, and I don't know how he'd feel about that. He asked the obnoxious employee to get the remote so he could put them in cinema mode for a more accurate picture. The employee eventually did so, but not before telling Jack that Sony loads custom firmware onto the store demo TVs. Really? Jack asked why, and the employee said it resets the TV back to the demo mode picture setting within seconds of any changes. Seconds? They do this to prevent anyone from messing with the picture and making it better, and potentially costing them a sale. And the default demo picture mode is how they want their TVs to look in the stores. Wow. Jack persisted, got the remote, changed the Sony to its cinema picture mode, but sure enough, before he could even start playing 4K HDR demo, the TV reset itself to the demo picture mode and made any meaningful comparison impossible. There's already a shortage of places where you can go to see different products with your own eyes before buying them. I agree. It's super frustrating here. So making it impossible to adjust the settings in the stores only worsens the situation, at least in Jack's opinion. Jack is correct.
I have to agree as well.
That's a nightmare.
I do kind of understand the whole, we don't want people playing with the settings, leaving it there and having something looking really weird because
sure, but that's when the employee should know how to simply put it back in the mode. It's not that hard.
Now, the weird thing is, like, so if anyone's bought a TV recently, a modern TV recently, they almost always, when you first turn them on, have the option of setting it to store mode or home mode. That's almost all TVs now. And if you set it to the store mode, they all do this, where they do go back to whatever the default picture settings are. That's what the store mode essentially does. But it usually gives you a little bit of time before it does it. So I'm not sure if maybe that's just Sony's store mode by default. I don't know if it actually is a custom firmware the way the employee said, but it could be. It's not impossible.
So they're not just taking a TV out of a box and setting it. They're sent special TVs that are meant to be demo TVs in Best Buy. Is that what?
I'm not completely sure, because the thing, like, let's say you have a normal TV, it's in a store, and they put it in the store mode. When they first turned it on, they selected store mode, and that would make sense. If you do a full factory reset, you can then initialize it so that it's as though it were fresh out of the box, and then you could select home mode. So like, let's say you brought in a Harmony remote of your own. It is theoretically possible that even a TV that was set up in store mode, a user somehow might be able to put it back into home mode. So maybe they're just like, nope, not going to let it happen.
Yeah.
Completely. It's not impossible. So I don't know. I can't confirm or deny, but given what was described, it's not impossible that it really is a custom thing.
Don't they sell some of those, don't they? Like after a while at a great discount?
Store demos, yeah, you would think. So I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure.
Like
However,
maybe there's some way you could research ahead of time how to turn that off. There's some combination of buttons you can press when you turn it on or something, and just go in there and do it anyway.
But yeah, you will find that all TVs in the big box stores, they're set to the store mode, and so if you change the settings, they will, after some amount of time, reset back to the demo store mode.
Well, when you live, especially like I do in a smaller city, we've got Best Buy and Best Buy.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so, I mean, you could go to Target or Walmart or something, but they just don't have the 65-inch OLED LG that I want so bad.
Yes.
Although Target has the 55-inch. Believe it or not, they do at Target. But that's the only choice you have. And so I remember even this has been a problem for years, a dozen years ago when I bought the first HD TV we have, the Plasma. I just had to go on reviews I was reading online because I had to special order the thing anyway. So that's all you can do. Frustrating. Rich W. just wanted to mention that the second episode of the TV show Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams, available on Amazon Prime in the USA, includes some crazy subwoofer content. He knows people are always on the lookout for good subwoofer demo material, so apparently Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams on Amazon Prime will rock your bass world.
Sure, I've seen that. It's actually on one of the broadcast channels in Canada, but I've seen the ads. I'm like, that looks interesting. I just haven't found the time to watch it. So it's
what
not
kind
that
of show is that?
Well, it's Philip K.
Sci-fi?
Dick, so it's got to be sci-fi.
Sci-fi, yeah. I mean, but okay. So just mystery, try it, see how it sounds.
Sure.
All right. Roger J says that when we were describing the ELAC Adante speakers, we neglected to talk about the internal baffle design where the smaller powered woofer is mounted within an internal baffle that creates two chambers, and chambers are in quotes here, with different volumes. These two chambers are then ported to allow airflow between them, but the different chamber volumes will mean an intentional difference in pressure, which can be used to accelerate the airflow that acts against the passive radiator. This is somewhat similar to the H-pass woofer and cabinet design. It's just that the end output happens to be a passive radiator instead of a port. So they've really tuned this little internal chamber to push that passive radiator in a different way. Harder?
I mean, it's so in theory, yeah. So I mean, one of these chambers is significantly larger than the other, so naturally pressure will be higher in the smaller chamber. But then you've got these airflow between the two chambers, which would cause air to flow from whatever is in the higher pressure zone into the lower pressure zone. And then when the active woofer, which is inside of the cabinet in the Adante speakers, when that, of course, changes direction and goes back the other way, then it'll be the reverse. So it's interesting because...
so the real woofer that's really woofing is inside the speaker. You can't see it.
Inside the speaker entirely. Yeah, you cannot see it at all from the outside.
Weird.
So the H-pass design is different in that in the H-pass design, the woofer itself, the active woofer, does have access to the outside air. And then it's just what they've done on the inside of the cabinet where they basically build a second chamber. So some of the air that is coming from the back wave of the woofer in the H-pass design goes naturally through the regular port, but then some of that also goes into this smaller chamber where it essentially accelerates and then will come back out. Some of that acting against the back of the woofer, some of it going out the port. So all of it is akin to some sort of... you can't really call it a folded horn or a folded port, but the idea is to increase pressure in the direction where you want to increase pressure. Now, Andrew Jones himself didn't describe any of that. He really just said that the whole idea is that the passive radiator acts as a mechanical filter, that instead of an electrical filter, that passive radiator is acting as a mechanical filter, so that the much lower strength harmonics will basically be filtered out by the mechanics of that passive radiator. He didn't mention, however, looking at it, I have to say Roger has to be correct in some regard, in that if you just look at it, one of those chambers is clearly smaller than the other. The pressure is going to be higher in the smaller chamber.
Definitely, yes.
It's just the way it is. So yeah, it's an interesting design. I haven't heard it. I don't know if it's good or bad, but you know, Andrew Jones in general is a pretty darn smart speaker designer. So yeah, an interesting thing. I appreciate that, Roger.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, but I'm not going to write it off right away. There could be some serious science going on there. So are we on to... we're
on to our questions. Let's dig into the meat.
Okay, here comes some meat. I just ate some pork a little while ago. So from last week, some leftover stuff here. Roy B on Facebook. Roy took our advice and bought a Sony X800 Ultra HD Blu-ray player to replace his universal disc player that died. All of a sudden, he wants a 4K TV. Don't we all?
What do you know?
Yeah, how about that? His receiver is a Denon X4000, which cannot pass HDCP 2.2. He understands he can send the video directly to the TV and use the Sony player's second HDMI output to send audio only directly to his Denon. But what about lip sync and lag? He knows that if the audio is preceding the video, he could adjust the lip sync delay in his Denon. But what if the video is preceding the audio? Does that happen? Should he be concerned that this might happen, and what could he do about it if it does? Interesting. Does video ever precede audio?
I have seen
You've
that.
Seen that.
It's not impossible.
One would think with the additional processing necessary for video that wouldn't happen, but
yeah, it's far less common, which is why in the vast majority of AV receivers, the synchronization setting that's available only delays the audio. That's like the only thing it does. Now, I have seen the odd device that does go the other direction, but of course that'll only work if video and audio are both going through that device, because it has to delay. You can't magically make something go faster than when it arrived. So the only thing you can do is delay one of them.
Despite me hitting fast forward watching the DVR live, I have yet to be able to fast forward the live universe around
me.
That's
right. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So the main question is, should he be concerned about this? I would have very, very little concern about it.
I'd be super surprised.
Yeah. Like I say, it's not entirely impossible, but I would have very, very little concern. So first of all HDMI devices do have a lip sync setting. That's one of the things that HDMI can do. And as long as you activate that lip sync setting in all of the devices, so in your case, it'll be 3 devices, your television, your Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and your AV receiver. As long as all of them have that lip sync setting activated, it should take care of the bulk of any of these issues. Now, if you do happen to run into a situation where your video is somehow preceding your audio, usually the trick is to just start turning on more and more of the video processing options in the television, because that will add latency to the video, whether or not
noise cancellation, everything.
Yeah, you crank on that full soap opera effect. Hopefully you can just do it by, showing each frame 5 times instead of actually interpolating frames. But yeah, the more video processing that you activate, the greater the latency will be in the video. But honestly, Roy, your main question was, should you be concerned about it? And truly, no. I mean, is it utterly impossible? I can't say that, but I would not have a big concern about it.
That'd be super surprising.
Yeah.
I would think so. All right. So I think that's a good answer. Don't worry about it, man. Jack R. At the moment, Jack has an unfinished basement. Fun. He put a TV down there and hooked up an Xbox One. Also fun. Dude basement. And when his kids were using it, he was shocked at how loud it was on the first floor. Clearly, he needs to finish that basement. He'd like to design and install a finished theater, but he has doubts about his ability to soundproof the space. He wants to have can lights and in-ceiling speakers, and he figures he'll end up with around 20 holes in his ceiling when all's said and done. He isn't crazy about the idea of constructing soundproof backer boxes for all of them. Over on AVS Forum, the folks there were saying he'd pretty much need to build an entire room within a room. I mean, that is ideal. Then he considered maybe just sound clips with hat channels, possibly double drywall with green glue. Yeah. But wouldn't that all be pointless if he has 20 holes in the ceiling? Little Swiss cheese up there. A lot of fun, though. So what should he do? Completely ordinary construction with a single layer of drywall and no backer boxes for any of the holes in the ceiling? Will having insulation in the ceiling joists make it even a little bit quieter than the completely unfinished basement he has right now? Yeah. Would there be any value to sound clips and hat channels or double drywall with green glue if he isn't going to also have backer boxes. I mean, you're definitely going to need some mass between the volume of air that those speakers are moving and the floor above it. There's just going to have to be something.
Yeah, there has to be a barrier.
Yeah.
So let's go with, let's say, just a completely ordinary construction. Just put a single layer drywall right against the ceiling joists.
Yeah.
You cut 20 holes in there. Some of those are can lights. Some of those are actually in ceiling speakers, meaning the back wave of those speakers is firing straight up into those joists. And all you have is insulation that you've put in there.
Right.
Now, technically, you might be 2, optimistically 3 decibels quieter at that point than the nothing at all that you have right now. So technically, it's tiny bit quieter, but 2, optimistically 3 decibels is very little.
Yeah.
You are going to hear, especially those in-ceiling speakers, but even not the in-ceiling speakers, even just the stuff that's getting through the holes where the can lights are, it's not going to be much. If you want it to be quieter than what it is right now, and he's like, right now, it's kind of shockingly loud.
Yeah, if it's shockingly loud now, it's going to be ever so slightly less shockingly loud if you just put one layer of
slightly less, very slightly less. If that is not acceptable, and I wouldn't be happy with that amount of sound leakage, you do need to do something a little bit more. So what are your options? So option number 1 is you do normal construction, single layer drywall, insulation in the ceiling joists, but you surface mount as many things as you possibly can. You use track lighting, LED lighting, and on ceiling speakers instead of in ceiling speakers. I mean, you know, that is the easiest thing to do, and that will be, you'll hear it upstairs. Make no mistake, you'll hear it upstairs, but it will be quieter.
Right, that will make a difference.
Oh, yes.
You know, an actual noticeable difference.
Yeah, because single layer of drywall, that's going to give you at least 15 STC right there, which drops you a good 6-7 decibels. That's
Remind everyone STC.
Sound transmission coefficient.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Some math going on there.
That's what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, it will be quieter than what you have right now. You'll hear it upstairs, but it'll be quieter. Now, if you're like, nope, I've got to have it mounted in there, could you do the backer boxes? Because that will significantly help. Your question of, let's say you put up 2 layers of drywall with green glue in between, but you still drilled the 20 holes. You might, I mean, it should be overall quieter. You know, the sound that's coming from your front speakers that are in the basement room as opposed to, you know, inserted in the ceiling, it should damp that down.
That would damp some of that big bass from subwoofers in the room, wouldn't it? Some.
But you still
not
have
enough.
the holes. You still have the holes. And the in-ceiling speakers themselves, those are still going right
yeah,
through
they're still
upstairs.
vibrating the floor, yeah.
So it's not a great solution. Now, could you maybe put the backer boxes just on the in-ceiling speakers and not on the can lights? You know, that maybe, you know, like, again, you're still going to hear it upstairs.
That would help.
But it'll help. It'll be better. And how many in-ceiling speakers are you going to have, Matt? Or maybe all of them are, though. Maybe even his front speakers are going to be in-ceiling, at which point, ooh, man, not a great solution. So... what do I think is a decent solution? Because obviously he's trying to save some money and not go nuts here.
Right.
One thing I think you could do, normal construction, so single layer drywall, insulation in the joists. Then 4 inches below that, could you put a suspended ceiling? And it doesn't have to be a hefty suspended ceiling. We're talking your cheapo Home Depot suspended ceiling at this point, just so that the suspended ceiling now holds your speakers and your can lights, but you have the continuous layer of drywall above that to act as a sound barrier. Again, you're still going to hear it upstairs, but it'll be significantly quieter.
I think if I was in the middle of construction and I knew I was going to live there for a while and the theater is important to me, that amount of money is worth it. Even if I had to spend less on the equipment, because that's going to make... so you'll be able to watch things and play games at times when you wouldn't be able to otherwise. You know, if the feeling hits you at 1 a.m., it'd be nice to have that option.
A basic DIY T-bar ceiling is not super expensive.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not going for the specialized tiles for this because they're not your real ceiling. The drywall above them is your real ceiling.
Right.
So that's not a huge price increase. The question is, though, it's a basement. I don't know how much ceiling height he has. Maybe one of the reasons he doesn't want to do room with a room is because he doesn't have the ceiling height to spare.
Yeah, if you don't have the ceiling height to spare to drop anything down, I would just surface mount everything on that ceiling.
Really
and
is
seal up that ceiling.
Yeah, you know, you go focal birds, focal little birds,
yeah,
something like that. Those are easy to surface mount. You go track lighting, LED lighting, something that isn't your pot lights.
There's all kinds of neat LED lightings that are so flat. And you don't have to cut into the ceiling above. So all kinds of neat things you can do. So yeah, I'd either do that or hang the ceiling like you said.
Yeah. So those are the less expensive. You know, make no mistake, you're going to hear it upstairs, but it's if you all you have is a layer of drywall and in-ceiling speakers, forget it. It's exactly what you have now at that point.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, you kind of focus it and tighten up that bass in between those joists. You're like really thumping everybody's floor upstairs. All right, so that's, yeah, I agree with you. And we will move on now to John, who asked a question via Twitter. Have we, this podcast, ever talked about Wharfdale speakers? Are they any good? I think I recall you guys mentioning Wharfdale at some point.
Yeah, the name has come up. Someone else asked about a particular pair of Wharfdale speakers, and yeah, I've had little experience. I believe I've heard two different model of Wharfdale speakers, but this is going back several years at this point, so I can't claim to know what their current lineup sounds like at all. At the time, I thought they were perfectly fine. I thought they were absolutely decent, good sounding speakers. They didn't particularly stand out in any way, which is, let me be very clear, not a bad thing. Right. Because you want your speakers to essentially be neutral and accurate, which means they shouldn't stand out in any particular way.
So that might be the best compliment of all, is that they were transparent and didn't seem like they were there, you know?
Yeah. However, given the other speakers I was looking at, you know, especially Internet Direct, given that Wharfdale isn't largely available online, that they're, you know, more a store brand, you know, the value for money and all that, you know, I just felt a little bit more strongly about some other speakers. However, if someone said, I've got some Wharfdale speakers, I'd be like, you got some pretty nice speakers.
And they look really good. I mean, these are some good, to me, my aesthetic, you know, if you have a real theater and you're not trying to blend into some other decor, some good looking stuff right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are plenty of brands like Lin is another brand we rarely mention on this podcast. I think I've said their name a couple of times, but they make very nice speakers. They don't come up a lot because I always try to go for the speakers that I think sort of set a goalpost. You know, like here's a performance level at a given price point that not many other speaker manufacturers are hitting. And so when you get into some of these brands that aren't largely available online and you have to buy them in stores, it's, you know, they tend to just out of your pocket cost a little bit more. But there's nothing wrong with them. You know, Mission Speakers, another very nice speaker brand that we rarely mention, but if someone says I have Mission speakers, I'm like, you got good speakers.
Sure.
So yeah, same thing with Wharfdale. If you were looking at some Wharfdales, maybe they're used or something like that, no reason to avoid them, John.
Right. I should go get me a pair since Ancestry.com just told me I was British.
That's right.
That's a British brand. So yeah, they're good. Alex P, parentheses, dude.
He got duded.
He got duded?
He got duded.
What does that mean now? Did I miss that? What is that, an inside joke I missed because I'm not on the show enough?
Tom was just saying, like, because I was the one who I was like, dude. So Tom found that very humorous. He's like, Rob rarely does that. So Alex is now dude.
Alex P. Dude. When Alex wrote to us a couple weeks ago, part of his question was figuring out the order in which he should buy his audio upgrades. We made recommendations for new speakers, AV receivers, subwoofers, and acoustic treatments. But when his wife got annoyed by his existing setup and knowing he wanted to make big changes, said, just fix this room. He pretty much bought everything all in one go. Well, if you have to. If you have to. I mean, she said, you know.
We spent time going like, here's what you buy first, here's what you buy second. Tom and I disagreed, so we debated a little, and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to buy it all.
Yeah. There's also the spousal factor of, I'm sick of hearing about it, just get what you need. And I know in my relationship, that's happened before, so tired of hearing about it. So now he has a Denon AVR-X4300W, dual SVS PB12-NSD subwoofers that he managed to get from Amazon, still at the $500 each Black Friday sale price. Nice. 4 absorption panel DIY kits from AcousmaC, and 2 pairs of KEF Q100 speakers on clearance. Nice. Hey, man, that sounds like good stuff. And he sent us pictures. And
well, I've got the pictures of his old setup. I don't have the pictures of his new setup yet. Yeah, so.
Send us pictures, man. Share. I want to see all the new stuff.
Well, he's got some questions about how he should set it all up. So I'm sure once it's all done.
The first thing he did was replace his old receiver and used 3 of his 4 KEF Q100 speakers as left, center, and right, with a spare Q100 left over. He really loves the KEF sound, so what should he do since he has 1 extra Q100? Should he pony up for a dedicated KEF center speaker and then use his 4 Q100s as front, left, right, and surrounds? The available KEF centers are all much more expensive than the clearance Q100s. Should he just get another pair of clearance Q100s and still end up with an unused spare? Huh. Good question.
So
if the clearance Q100s are cheaper than one of the centers, as weird as it is to have just a leftover speaker, that would be my first feeling.
Yeah,
especially
I mean,
if you're happy already.
One thing to know about the KEF speakers, especially like the Q100, the Q100 is a 2-way speaker, so it's a woofer and a tweeter, but it's a concentric design, so the tweeter is smack dab in the middle of that woofer.
Okay.
Which means if you turn that speaker on its side, its dispersion is exactly the same.
So it's like car stereo speaker.
Yeah. So there is no reason why you can't use a Q100 as a center speaker.
That's
Absolutely no reason at all. So yeah, given that a pair of Q100s is actually less expensive than a dedicated KEF center.
And he already says he loves the sound.
Yeah, which I was really happy to hear because I sort of mentioned the KEFs in passing when we were going through it because he had given some suggestions of what he might like to go for, and everything he listed was like really high efficiency, super loud output capability type of stuff. So I wasn't fully expecting that the KEFs would be his choice, but he got them, he likes them, and I'm super happy because if he hadn't mentioned the high efficiency stuff, those would be one of my top recommendations for his setup. They're like the right size for his room size, all that stuff. But I've got what I think is an even better solution now. On the one hand, if you take the clearance price of the pair of Q100s, which he got them at $250 a pair, which is a great price. That actually crept back up to $280 a pair right after he bought them, so he got them at a good time. But over at Accessories for Less, they do sell single Q100s. Now, they sell them for $180 each, so that means on a per unit basis, it's not nearly as good as even $280 a pair.
But it's cheaper than buying 2 and having 1 sit in the closet.
It's still cheaper overall, right? I mean, it's still $100 saved no matter how you cut it. So I see no real downside. You get the Q100 at the lower price, certainly less expensive than one of the dedicated center models. So yeah.
Right. So really no need to have a spare speaker unless they're in reach of children or something.
And now you got 5 identical speakers for your 5 around you.
There you go. Further on here, the dual PB12-NSD subs and the 4 DIY AcousmaC panels are game changers, he says.
Love to hear that.
Yeah. He would have loved to get even more panels, but he's completely out of money now. He still wanted to try Atmos, so he quickly mounted his Logitech speakers to the shelf that's holding his projector on the rear wall, and he called them top middles. He'd like something a little nicer as a permanent setup, though. He doesn't want to cut holes in his ceiling, and he does have an older pair of Sony bookshelf speakers on hand that would be better than the Logitechs. What would we recommend? Should he try to get another pair of KEF Q100s? He probably just wants another pair. They're great. And somehow mount them on the ceiling so that he has matching KEF speakers in all positions? Should he get and mount focal little birds, or should he just mount his Sony bookshelf speakers? Well, you said you were out of money.
Yeah.
That's really making me lean toward the Sony bookshelf speakers.
And they are going to be the overhead speakers where me, being a very critical and picky person, will tell you they don't have to perfectly timbre match for the elevation positions. That is certainly the affordable choice.
Yes.
And if you were to mount your Sony speakers for the overhead position, I would be like, yeah, that's a totally reasonable thing to do.
And that could be replaced when the money comes back in and you want KEF 100s to make everything match.
Perhaps.
If you just like
I mean,
that.
The Q100s honestly would be a little bit awkward. They're not super tiny. I mean, they're not huge, but they're not super tiny.
They're deep.
And so mounting them on a ceiling, a little bit iffy to me. Now, KEF does have a model of speaker called the E301, which is very similar in form factor to the Focal Little Birds. It comes with a mount attached to it, which is a pivot mount, which means it would be very easy to attach the KEF E301s to the ceiling and pivot them to aim them however you would like. However, over at Accessories for Less, you can get them, but they're $300 for the pair. So they're even more expensive than Q100s, but you'd be getting them for the form factor only.
Right.
Should he pay $200 for a pair of Focal Little Birds? It's really hard to justify that, honestly.
Yeah.
Truthfully,
Sony bookshelf, man. Sony bookshelf.
Mount your Sony bookshelves.
Yeah.
They'll be fine. If they were going to be your front, left, right, or even your surrounds, I might hesitate because I want a better timbre match in those positions. But for the overhead speakers, yeah, just go with what you already have. Save the money.
By the way, those KEF E301s, they look like what we thought the future was going to look like in the early 70s. They're like
little eggs.
They're like little
eggs.
white mixing bowls with grills over the top, and they look really cool, but it just reminds me of like what we thought everything was going to look like in the 2000s, and it never looked like that. Anyway, even more changes. He has a 54-inch plasma mounted on the front wall. Then he has a motorized 110-inch projection screen mounted 18 inches in front of the front wall. While they've loved the big screen experience, his wife doesn't like the look of the screen being mounted so far forward. It was a cheap screen, so it has some wrinkles and warping along the edges. And to top it all off, the new receiver and KEF speakers are tall enough that the bottom of the screen would crash into them when it comes down. So he bought a silver ticket fixed frame screen, but in order for it to perfectly fit on his front wall without interfering with the light switch, he had to go with a 92-inch screen size. So now that he has a smaller screen and it's farther away, do we think he should move his couch forward to compensate? Yeah. And if so, how much would he have to move it forward to get close to the field of view that he used to have with his 110-inch screen that was 18 inches closer? You getting all this math, Rob?
I sure am.
You're the math genius. We're about to hitch up. The distance from the front wall to the back wall is 14 feet. Calculator man, hit it.
So first of all, I'm really, really happy that he's open to the idea of moving his couch forward because I wanted him to do that anyway, just to get it off the back wall.
Yeah, try never to put it right up against that back wall.
Yeah, so really happy to hear that that might be an option regardless. So let's just go through the figures. And if you want to, you can go online and use the viewing distance calculator. If you just Google viewing distance calculator, or we'll have the link for it on avrant.com. If you don't want to work out the math yourself and do the the tangent to figure out your angles,
trigonometry, everyone, trigonometry. Here it comes.
You just plug in the numbers to viewing distance calculator, and it'll spit out the result for you. So when he had a 110-inch screen and he was sitting effectively 12.5 feet away because it was 18 inches off the front wall and he was right against the back wall, and front to back is 14 feet, he had a 35.5 degree field of view.
Right.
That's what he had before. Now, 92 inches from 14 feet away, so this is he mounts the 92-inch screen on the front wall and he still sits on the back wall, doesn't move his couch at all. That would give him a 26.8 degree field of view, which I agree is kind of small.
Yeah.
So 92 inches from 10.5 feet away would give him effectively the same field of view as the 110-inch from 12.5 feet away. So we're talking about moving you off the back wall by 3.5 feet.
There you go.
Off the back wall by 3.5 feet.
And that's enough room. Get one of those cool little behind the couch tables.
You could.
And put some cool stuff back there. That's what I would do.
So there you go. That's what you need to do.
Do that. So here we go. The next part of his question starts with a question. When will this be done? Asks his wife. If he has 5 KEF Q100 speakers, the silver ticket screen mounted on the front wall, his Acoustimac panels mounted, and some sort of speakers mounted above him, he figures the setup will finally be complete. Sure. But should he rotate the entire setup 180 degrees? Should he make it even more complicated so that he can swap his 92-inch screen for a larger one? That one is really more up to you. That's a hard thing to recommend. If you turn it around, 6 of one, half dozen the other. How important is the bigger screen to you? I mean, just looking at the pictures he has sent, there's nothing wrong about that.
Yeah. other than the seats, he has seats other than his couch. Where are they going to go? Because they're not going to face the screen anymore unless they're blocking the walkway or on the other side of the hallway. Or honestly,
or floating out in the middle of the room, kind of.
If you can move your seat, I mean, you don't even if you don't move it 3.5 feet, 2.5 feet, 3 feet, if you can move your couch off of that back wall, like you already have the 92-inch screen in hand, you already have the speaker set up, you're just going to hang the screen, like. Don't hassle your wife any further.
I think you're done. I think
move the couch. You're done.
You got what you need. It's going to be great. Don't overthink it. Sitting the same distance from that 92-inch screen is going to be exactly the same as if you turn the room around, got a bigger screen, and move farther back. So what are you doing? Now keep it simple. She clearly would like this to hurry up and be over with.
Yep. Moving the couch doesn't take a lot of time.
No, man, just pull that couch forward. Vacuum where it was, and you're done.
Go. Room done. Yes.
All right. You know what? Finally, we're going to answer questions for this week as we are, an hour into the podcast or so.
That's normal for us.
That's about right. We'll see how many we can do. I need to bug out in about an hour. Okay. Kenny J. Kenny got an SNES Classic for Christmas. He wants to spend time playing it, but he also wants to spend time with his wife. That's good. So he's looking for a way to play the SNES in the living room while she watches TV at the same time. He could set up a second TV, but that'd be ugly. Something portable would be much better. He has a 2011 MacBook Pro, and it was his understanding that the mini display port on MacBooks could be used as an input as well as an output. I did not know that. He bought a mini display port to HDMI adapter, but it seems maybe he was wrong about the port being an input. Is there any way to get an external signal into the MacBook for video and audio? I would guess not. I'd be surprised if that worked as an input. Am I wrong?
So I mean, I haven't used MacBook Pros.
I'm not a Mac person at all. I'm sorry, I can't help on that one.
Everything I could find online going back to 2011 says no.
Yeah.
Everything says that DisplayPort is an output, not an input. On the newest ones, there's some indication that there is an ability to use it as an input. So I'm sure that's where he got the info from.
But there are TVs that are small and portable and...
But having an HDMI input is not actually that common on the little portable
on smaller
TVs.
Ones. That is true. I wanted to get like a really tiny one for the kitchen.
Yeah.
And you had to buy like a professional monitor to like for television stuff, to put on a camera, and that's all I could find. And
the SNES Mini only has an HDMI output. That is its lone signal output. But there is so it's available in both a 13.5 and a 15.5 screen size. Interestingly, the 15.5 screen size is like $5 less expensive than the 13.5 screen size. The brand is Axess, spelled with an AXESS, and it's the TVD-1801. It actually has a little DVD player built right into the thing.
So is he gonna like sit this on a coffee table in front of him, and his wife is just kind of looking past the coffee table at the regular TV?
If you went for the 13.5, that's certainly portable. In fact, it even comes with a cigarette lighter adapter, so you could use it in a car if you wanted to.
Awesome.
It's not battery powered. It does need to be plugged in. But I mean, to me, if you have a 13.5-inch TV, I imagine you can quite easily move that out of the room.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Yeah. So just set you up a little extension cord or something.
$120, $120 is not too bad. I mean, the key is it has an HDMI input. Now, it is HD in that it's above 1280 by 720. It's 1366 by 768 resolution.
Okay, yeah.
But that's okay. It'll scale. You're not going to get very good black levels. You're not going to get super high contrast, but you probably weren't going to get that from your laptop screen either.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't have a better solution. If somebody else knows of something better or knows a way to make a 2011 MacBook Pro act as an input. I mean, you could get a capture card, but the only ones I've seen that do HDMI usually don't support HDCP.
Yeah.
They don't
maybe the Blackmagic design. What do they call it?
$350?
It's a little bit, 200. I think it's somewhere around 200.
Okay. So that's more expensive than buying this TV.
Yeah. So just buy the small TV.
Or I guess you could get an HD Fury to go in between your capture card and your SNES Mini, but the HD Furies are $150 and up.
There's just there's no way to get it into a notebook computer. So if you want to sit the screen in your lap, I don't know a way to do it. I would go the whole, do you have room for a coffee table? Because I'm picturing like this little TV. Aren't there like VESA mounts where you can lay the screen all the way down? and lift it so you can like mount it to a coffee table and like just fold it down out of the way when you're not
I
using
say
it.
just carry this thing into the room, plunk it down, play
Just
for a
plunk it down,
while,
plunk it
carry
down.
it out of the room.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, just thinking of all the possible options here.
Yep,
just
yep.
whatever helps the relationship. You know, I want you guys happy. So there's your answer, man. Just get a little TV. You can buy one that's not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to make a computer do it. Karl R, which is hard to say 5 times fast. Karl R. Karl R.
Rural juror.
Rural juror. Scott Wilkinson wrote about his experience watching the Olympics in 4K HDR. In the USA, Comcast Xfinity is offering the events that are available in 4K as video on demand in HDR10 with Dolby Atmos. Dish has a dedicated 4K channel that can be recorded on their DVR in HDR10 with regular 5.1 audio. And DirecTV also has a recordable channel, but they're using HLG along with Atmos audio.
Yeah, so that's hybrid log gamma, which is another form of HDR, a different signal type.
Yet another, huh? Okay. But for all of them, the 4K footage isn't available until 24 hours after the event originally took place. Well, that's because they're putting it on demand. So there is no way to watch 4K live Olympics.
Yeah.
Scott feels this is a dilemma since he doesn't really want to wait and likely be spoiled on the results, but the 4K footage he's watched really does look much better than the regular HD broadcast. Yeah. Karl and his wife have DirecTV, and they've felt it's been worth waiting the 24 hours so they can watch in 4K HLG HDR with Atmos. Another AVRant listener, Roger J., wrote in to say that he also thinks the 4K HDR footage he's receiving from Dish looks spectacular. Have Tom and Rob been watching in 4K? And what do we think about this 24-hour delay? What do we think the 2020 Summer Olympics broadcast will be like? Now, my guess is it'll be live by 2020.
Yep, I think it will.
In a stream form. You know what's absurd? The only 4K screen I have in my house is a notebook computer. And it's driving me insane. I can't wait to get that OLED. It's just silly. It's a fantastic notebook computer. I bought a good HP, but it's just silly that my 4K screen is 15 inches. I just press it to my face and watch these streams.
Well, it's yeah, my first 3D monitor was my computer monitor before I got a 3D TV.
There you go.
That happens sometimes. Yeah, so I can answer for Tom. He's not watching in 4K. He doesn't have a 4K TV.
Right.
I'm not watching in 4K because we do have one of our service providers, TELUS, is providing 4K, and I think Bell is providing it as well, but I'm with Shaw, and they don't have 4K service yet. So I am not watching it in 4K, even though I do have a 4K TV now, but the service is not available to me. So, nope, neither of us, Tom or myself, Lee, I guess you haven't been watching it in 4K.
Nope, I wish I could. I have watched some things on my notebook in 4K.
Sure, but
and
not
just
the
like I
Olympics.
said, held it right up to my face, and it looks amazing.
So, yeah, the 24-hour delay, I mean, NBC is delaying their broadcasts anyway, aren't they? They're not showing anything live on NBC.
No, they are showing some, like if you, at certain times I've seen where it says live in the corner of the screen, and, I do the math and go, oh, it's 13 hours ahead of me. Okay.
Sure.
So they have had some stuff live, and I just feel like inevitably there by 2020 we'll have at least something streams online.
Yep.
There's not going to be a way to do it through, I mean, some cable company might do it, I suppose, yeah.
No,
But,
I mean, this is early days for 4K broadcast. I think this is just the result of they want to actually make sure the footage works. Yeah. If they're doing it in HDR10, they have to add the metadata after the fact, so it'd be really hard to do it live.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it makes sense. I think maybe they're being a little bit conservative, but that's because they want it to function properly, which I think is fair enough. And yeah, by 2020, I think it'll be live. Yeah,
at least they're getting it right, you know, even though it's 24-hour delay. Do you know I kind of have to do this with regular television programs because Comcast nowadays downscales everything to 720p,
right?
Unless certain channels say they can't, and like the NFL channel still 1080i. But if you watch it on demand, it's the original resolution and has better color, even on a regular high def TV. So on demand is a better way to watch stuff. For me, it's frustrating, but I'm so used to watching stuff. So what I've learned to do, if the picture quality is important to me, I watch it on demand, and then I just get out my phone and do Facebook during the commercials that they don't let you fast forward through.
Okay,
so I've just learned this new way of doing things. So I just do a little Facebook, and then the program's back on again. Put the phone down. So there you go. Next question is from Alvin C. Alvin has 2 subwoofers, a Paradigm PS1000 That's a 200-watt 10-inch ported and claims 10 dB at down 10 dB, negative 10 dB at 22 hertz. And he has a JBL PSW1000. That's a 100-watt 10-inch ported, claims minus 6 dB at 30 hertz.
Yeah, neither of them list a negative 3 dB point because it's not very impressive.
Right.
So one of them gives you a minus 6 and one of them gives you a minus 10.
It's always mind games. No one wants to be honest.
That's right.
He has them level matched, and they seem to play well together for the most part. But now he has an opportunity to pick up a second Paradigm PS1000. So he wonders, is timbre matching subs a thing? Timbre matching subs a thing? No. Should he get the PS1000 and sell the JBL? How worth it would it be? So how much difference is he going to tell if he gets that little bit more, which I assume, well, we don't know. It's 10 dB down at 22 hertz versus 6 dB down at 30 hertz. Which one's feeding him a little more accurate super low bass?
These subs that he already has, the Paradigm and the JBL, they're way more similar than they are different. So, I mean, really, what he's really asking is, if you have two identical subs versus two similar subs, will you notice a significant difference? And the answer is no.
No.
Timbre, when we talk about timbre or tone or what that's really about is upper harmonics. Why does a clarinet sound different than a flute? Both are capable of playing the same note, the same fundamental.
Right. The shape and the movement, yeah.
Yeah, if all you heard was the fundamental, it would sound just like a sine wave tone. And they can both play the same fundamental, but the reason those two instruments sound different are all the harmonics above the fundamental that color and shape the sound and give them their unique tone and timbre. That's exactly what happens with speakers as well. Timbre matching is about the harmonics, and we're not concerned about harmonics with subwoofers. We're concerned about low fundamentals.
Yeah. I mean, subwoofers have different capabilities, but they don't have quite as much different character as the tweeters on your speakers.
Yeah, there are things that can be different. Some can have more overhang. You know, the woofer continues to move when it really shouldn't.
Yeah.
Whereas others, you know, have faster transient response. Certainly, your extension and your overall output can be different. But again, these are going to be far more similar in all regards than different. So, would it be worth it to sell your JBL in place of a PS1000? I mean, if you're going to completely break even, I guess why not? Except for even the hassle to me isn't worth it in this case. Where I would spend your money is keep what you have, save up, get one subwoofer to start that can actually play all the way down to 20 hertz, because neither of these subs can.
If that's what you're shooting for, So just changing out that JBL is not going to give you a wow factor. It's not going to be.
I wouldn't say it's worth it. I wouldn't say it's even worth the hassle, even if you break even. If it's going to cost you any amount of money, I'd rather save that money and put it towards something that's really going to be different than either of these.
You could sell the JBL and get an even better Paradigm sub, or get your dream sub and let the Paradigm PS1000 play along with it. But don't worry about it, man. You got good stuff. Jason S. First up, Jason says, thanks for our continued dedication and practical advice. He's been listening to the recommendations we've suggested to other AVRant listeners, so he thinks we might recognize more than a few products in his current setup. Let's see. His theater is in his basement, and the room is 28 feet long, 13.5 feet wide, 9 feet high. That's nice, good space. His original plans included a door, but the fire marshal shot down those plans, and he was forced to build the room with a permanent opening at the back. That opening goes into the stairwell that leads up to his open concept first floor. So he isn't sure exactly how many cubic feet of air he's actually dealing with, but it's a very large number. It's not his fault, though. He was forced into that compromise.
Understood.
The rear 13-foot portion of his 28-foot-long room is elevated on a 12-inch platform. He has 2 rows of seats, 3 seats per row, plus bar stools behind the second row. He's been enjoying his theater for about 2.5 years now, but now he has the itch to upgrade something. He's got about $5,000 he could spend right now. Fun. So, here's the setup. A 150-inch 16:9 acoustically transparent Seymour AV projection screen. The frame already has the magnets installed for the manual masking panels if he wants them. But with 3 kids around and really not being bothered by the black bars, he never purchased the actual masking panels. Understood. A Sony HW55ES 1080p projector. He's happy with that, and he figures it might be another year or two before 4K HDR projectors really settle down. He's probably right about that. So he figures he'll probably wait a bit before considering a projector upgrade.
That's totally fine. Makes sense.
Makes sense. A Marantz AV7702 Pre-Pro, not the MK2 version, the Mark II version, so it doesn't have HDCP 2.2.
Which, of course, is no problem right now with a 1080p projector, but moving forward eventually, you know, his next one will probably be a 4K. Yeah.
So when you go to 4K, it's time to move on from there. An Emotiva XP-A7 Generation 2 7-channel amplifier. That is good for all the rest of time. 2 SVS PC2000 subwoofers, one in the front left corner, one in the rear right corner. So, yes, he has been listening about how to...
Oh, yes, except he has the big opening in the back of his room, so
but he can't help it.
He can't help it. But I'm just saying he doesn't actually have diagonally opposite corner placement because he essentially has a whole another room behind him there. So.
Well, the fire marshal ain't there every day. Anyway, Ascend Acoustics Sierra 2 for left, center, and right. HTM 200 SE for surrounds and surround backs. Surrounds are mounted behind the first row and in front of the second row of seats. 2 GIK soffit bass traps at the front of the room. 11 GIK Impression series absorption panels with wood diffusion plates for the side and rear walls. And RPG Acoustics absorption panels with diffusion scatter plates hidden behind the screen. This just sounds fantastic. So his question, what should he upgrade? What's not amazing?
You've got a very nice setup,
really
I
nice
have
setup.
to say. And yes, I do recognize many of those products as being recommendations that might have come from us.
Sure, sure. So here we go. Here are some of his ideas about what expand to Atmos. He would find it easy to add front wides and front heights. He also has positions on his ceiling where he could mount top middles overhead, although it would be a bit more of a hassle for the installation. That's not a bad idea. Expand Atmos.
So, well, yeah, let's actually comment on these as we go through, because I think it'll progress. Yeah, I mean, to me, the thing that so projector, I totally agree. Wait another year or two.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what else is there to upgrade? Now, looking at all the acoustic treatments he already has, plus opening at the back of the room, I'm like, there's not a heck of a lot more you need on that front. You've already done a really nice job of acoustically treating this space. Acoustically transparent screen at the front and a nice large size, which I'm assuming he's around 14 feet away from a 150-inch screen. He's got around a 45-degree field of view. Fantastic. Everything's looking great there. So what could you upgrade realistically that makes sense? It would be going to Atmos. Now, you already have a Pre-Pro that can do Atmos. As far as I know, the AV7702, the original version, never got the DTS-X update. I don't think that ever happened for that model. So you would be limited to Atmos. You wouldn't have DTS-X unless he just left out the Mark II and it actually is the Mark II, because that one can do DTS-X. But regardless, with what you already have, you could do 11-speaker Atmos.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to do 11-speaker Atmos, I would encourage you to take on the hassle of installing the top middle speakers and then have your front heights. You said front heights is easy, so have front heights and top middles. That should be your 11-speaker setup. Yeah, I think that's a
see, that's a thing you don't have now that would be truly different.
That's right.
So that's going to be the biggest wow factor, biggest bang for the upgrade buck. He could replace his Sierra 2 front speakers with larger Sierra Horizon RAW speakers. He could then buy one additional Sierra 2 so that he would have 2 pairs. Is that enough of a change?
So, I mean, honestly, I really like this idea. I do really like this idea because he already has 4 HTM 200 SEs, which are a different series of speaker. But if you use those 4 HTM 200 SEs as your overhead speakers, and then you had 4 Sierra 2s as your surround and surround backs, and then you had the larger Sierra Horizon RAL speakers as your front, left, center, right, I'm actually a little bit surprised that the Sierra 2s are totally satisfying him.
Oh, okay. With this, because of the space?
Just because of the distance, yeah. Now, for his front row, that probably makes sense. They should be able to hit very close to full reference volume, especially since he has that nice beefy Emotiva amp driving them. For his front row, they probably can hit, if not full up to it, very close to full reference volume. So that's maybe not a shock. But for his rear row and for the bar stools behind it, they're most likely not getting full reference volume if he ever sits there.
Right.
Whereas the Sierra Horizons could do that with their larger size. Also, the Horizon sound... Should I even say they sound a teensy bit better? Honestly, blindfold me and sit me 12 feet or closer. I probably can't tell the Horizons apart from the CR2s. But that's not an unreasonable thing to do.
All right.
It's given his distances. I don't want to say this is something everybody should do. I'm saying he's got the room length where it might make sense. And then he could repurpose the speakers he already has in very effective ways.
Okay, we'll try to keep all this in mind and see what we can fit in his budget. Yeah. He could upgrade his HDM 200 SE surrounds and surround backs to Sierra Lunas.
So if you did the previous one, no need to do that.
Right.
Right, because you're going to repurpose the 200 SEs as your overhead speakers, which you don't need to go to the Sierra Lunas for that. The 200s will work great overhead. Then you'd have 4 Sierra 2s as your surround and surround backs. Yeah.
So if you're going to do a speaker change, we're going to go with that previous option of getting the RALs. Just a strange looking RAAL.
It is.
RAL. What would we say would be his best speaker configuration and placement? I think you've already
we've covered
dealt with
that.
Right.
Yep.
So you said front heights, top middles?
Front heights, top middles. That's
right. Okay. If he's going to expand beyond 7 speakers, he'll need an additional amplifier if he continues using his AV7702. Should he get another Emotiva amp, or should he maybe replace his AV7702 with a different preamp or with an AV receiver? If so, which model? Now, I bet you got some opinions here.
I think you should.
Yeah.
I think you should. And the one I think you should get right now is the Denon AVR-X4400H. Now, why? Because if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, we've been saying the 4300H. Why am I suddenly changing to the 4400H? Well, because at Accessories for Less, the 4300H and the 4400H are now the exact same price. So why not get the newer one? Because the newer one, you'll probably never use it, but it has Oro 3D already built in, no additional charge.
Okay.
The 4300, you could get Oro 3D, but it was an additional $200 charge on top of what you pay originally. Plus the 4400H, it'll be getting the eARC update. Who knows if you'll ever use it, but hey, can't hurt to have it.
Yeah.
So yeah, since they're the same price, why not get the newer model?
That's $900 on sale right now.
$900 Accessories for Less. So that one has 9 amplifiers built in. I'm going to suggest you use 4 out of there.
Okay.
So continue using your 7-channel Emotiva and power your overhead speakers with the 4400H. It will have no difficulty doing that.
Not in the least.
So no need to buy another additional Emotiva amp. Get the 4400. It's affordable. It's great. And you'll be completely future-proof. So if you do decide to upgrade your projector to 4K, it's ready to go.
There you go. No, that's not a bad idea then. Okay, so continuing to add up, I think we're still in his budget, even for like 3 changes.
You could actually get the new speakers and this, and you'll be okay.
Yeah, okay, sounding good. Should he add more subwoofers? He has the always add more subwoofers. That's not a question on this podcast. That's an instant yes. He has the available space in his remaining 2 corners. If he does expand to 4 subs, how should he connect all 4 of them to his pre-pro? He knows the opening at the back means pressurizing the whole space is out of the question. Sure. He thinks his current bass is fine. Would he like more? Sure. I mean, we all do. We all want to live forever, you know? Sure, but realistically, he's not looking for more output, so would adding 2 more subs enhance anything in his case? You know what? Only if you pushed him right up against the seat so you can feel it. And if you just
I'm gonna put a pin in this one because his last question will bring us back to this. So I'm going to put a pin in that one just for now.
Fair enough. Should he add even more room treatments, maybe more bass trapping?
I honestly, most people I would be saying yes, but you've done a fantastic job.
Sounds like you did it right, yeah.
And you have the opening at the back, which is a gigantic bass trap.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's I don't think that's where you need to spend your money. No.
Right. Okay. So here's one more question from him. Yeah. Any ideas besides these that we think he should do instead? Any suggestions we have would be welcome.
I want you to spend about $100 over at Cross Spectrum Labs.
Okay.
To get yourself a calibrated UMic 1 measurement microphone.
Yeah, look at that thing.
You can definitely afford it. And then you get the free Room EQ Wizard program.
Okay.
Because I want you to start measuring your response, because that will reveal to you if you have any improvement to be made in your subwoofer linearity and uniformity across all your seats. So you're absolutely correct. If you added 2 more subs to the 2 you already have, you're not going to get an output increase. That's not going to happen. maybe 2 or 3 decibels, but nothing super significant.
Yeah.
So the reason you might consider going from 2 to 4 subs is you have these 2 rows of seats plus the bar stools behind that. And if you want uniform bass in all of those seats, it's possible that 4 subs would do that better than 2. But if you don't know what you have already,
yeah.
This is $100, well, a little bit more than $100, but close to $100 way to find out. And I think you'll enjoy the process of learning Room EQ Wizard and measuring anyway. I think that'll just be a fun
I would
thing
love
for you to
that.
do.
Like I'm tempted to do something like that. But put a little science to this.
Yes.
And that helps answer some of these questions.
Absolutely.
So you may find out that your ears are fooling you, but you may find out that you're right. It really just sounds as good as you thought it did.
Yep.
And so it sounds like...
Which it very well might. There very well might be no reason at all to go from 2 to 4 subs.
So it sounds like in his budget, he could get that receiver, expand to Atmos, do the raw speakers, and then buy that calibrated mic.
Yep.
And he will have a discernibly different experience.
That's an upgrade.
And
that
come
is
in under, yeah.
That is no bones about it upgrade. So
And-
that's what you wanted. That's what you got.
And he's under budget still, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hot dang. Look at us solving problems. There you go, man. There's your answer. Woo, that was a lot of questions. But I think we came to a happy conclusion. Okay. Infinite Gary. It's not a show without Infinite Gary.
It is not.
It is not. Have we ever listened to anything in the discrete DTS-ES 6.1 format? It doesn't seem to be very common. If you were to play it back using a 7.1 speaker system, does it actually sound the way the sound mix was intended? If you want to position a single surround back speaker for a genuine 6.1 setup, what is the optimal placement for that speaker? Was it meant to be elevated a bit like all the old Dolby and DTS placement guidelines, or was it meant to be directly behind you at ear level, same distance away from you as the 2 surround back speakers in a 7.1 setup? Or farther back, as though the 2 surround backs and this lone center surround back were forming the rear arc of a circle? Whew. I don't know why. For some reason, I'm reminded of my uncle's car in the 80s, a Fiero. I think it was called a Fiero. And I remember as a teenager, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world because it had speakers like right behind your ears in the seat, like in the headrest. I was like, this is the most awesome sports car ever. Just put it right there behind your head.
So the second Austin Powers movie, that's the only one I know for sure had a DTS-ES 6.1 soundtrack. I think one of the Star Wars movies on DVD did as well. I think that's the case. But I'm certain about that second Austin Powers movie, and I did hear that, except I heard it on a 7.1 speaker system, not a 6.1. So let's sort of run these. Have you heard any, Lee?
I have not. No, not a single thing.
Yeah, so if you have a 7.1 speaker setup and you play something in DTS-ES 6.1, does it sound exactly like 6.1? Well, if you are perfectly centered between your 2 surround back speakers, you do get stereo imaging, and it is pretty effective. It does work. If you're sitting to the left or the right, though, it's the same as what happens to your stereo image from your front speakers. It collapses to whatever is the nearest speaker. So it's okay for one listener, which would actually work for Gary, but not so great for multiple listeners to try and do that.
There's really nothing you could possibly do about that. I mean, if you had you're just going to have to deal with it.
I mean, the 7.1, it just makes you say, yeah, there's sound behind me. Is it directly behind me, or is it, slightly askew? You'll get a little bit of that. So where was it supposed to be placed? It was supposed to be elevated, just like your surround and your surround back speakers in all the older Dolby diagrams that they're like denying ever existed now. But it was, which actually created the issue where, because we're not very good at hearing things behind and above us at all, a lot of people, when they heard that discrete single surround back speaker, psychoacoustically, they would believe that sound was coming from in front of them. That was a common thing that happened. So that's why theaters, put in an array of speakers behind you so that you didn't get the psychoacoustic effect of thinking it came from in front of you, even though it came from behind you.
Yeah, if it's perfectly behind you,
yep,
you could misinterpret it. Interesting.
You do. Yeah, it does tend to happen. So yeah, let's see. Should it be the same distance away as your surround back speakers, or should it be as though it's on an arc? Well, technically, all of your speakers are supposed to be equidistant, but since that isn't realistic in a rectangular room, as most of us have, or a room with, you know, flat walls, that's where the distance setting in your AV receiver comes into compensate.
Yeah.
So yes, technically it should be, I guess, I mean, if you're just going like the perpendicular line, I guess it's farther away. But so theoretically, it should be the exact same distance away from you. It's just that the 7-point-ones would be, you know, to your left and right, so they would be on an arc. It would form an arc.
So few people ever had a room so deep, that much space behind where you're sitting.
But realistically, all you do is you put them somewhere behind you, and then you set the correct distance in your AV receiver. Yeah.
There you go. Of the new 2018 products that have been announced and are set to start coming out over the next few months, which ones interest us the most and pique our curiosity? And Rob has some opinions here.
I have a list.
Go ahead. All I know, like for me, the only thing I'm excited about is I'm hanging in, trying to see if we can get done with some house stuff so I can get that OLED.
Yeah, because they dropped down to like 2300 for the 65-inch.
I didn't see 2300. Where'd you see 2300?
I can't remember offhand now, but I know they did get down there.
That's getting pretty exciting. That means in the year 2018 we'll probably end up with an OLED. So that's me.
They're only increasing their manufacturing capacity in that, so the prices aren't going to go up.
The one that's been so cheap was the one with the thin silver bezel around it.
Yeah, the B7A, that was the least expensive.
And most people didn't like that one because of that. They wanted the black bezel.
That's a style thing.
Disappears a little bit more. So we'll see what they come out with.
The C7 was the most popular, and I'm certain the C8 will be the most popular this year.
Yeah.
I'm quite certain of that. I'm super excited about the Denon X8500H and the sister pre-pro model from Marantz, the AV8805. I'm super excited about 13-channel Atmos and getting my front wides back. So as soon as that starts showing up refurbished, I might be several $1,000s lighter in the wallet. I'm excited to see the TCL 6 series, which is replacing their P series. The P series in 2017 only had a 55-inch size. The 6 series is going to have 55 and 65-inch sizes. More full array local dimming zones, still with the Roku TV built in. I'm very excited about that at the budget end of the market because that's compelling stuff. I'm curious about Sony's X900F series. I'm not happy about the prices they announced, but given that full array local dimming, Dolby Vision support, more zones of local dimming, full 1000 nit peak brightness, and going all the way up to an 85-inch screen size, which we're not seeing from many other areas, although $7,000 for that 85-incher, but still, at least it exists if you want an 85-inch TV with all those specs. So that's interesting to me, and I'm curious about the Panasonic UB820 Ultra HD Blu-ray player. They do have another one that is a flagship to try and take on Oppo's 205 that they're calling the 9000. But these ones are the only Ultra HD Blu-ray players announced so far that support HDR10, HDR10 Plus, and Dolby Vision. So all the formats. So no matter what TV you have, it can do whatever HDR the TV can do. Those players can do it. So
there you go. Plays everything. And just on a tangentially related topic, one thing I'm looking forward to: Canon may be releasing a brand new digital SLR in the range that I have a 60D from some years back, and I think the 90D might be coming out this year. And if so, I'm crossing my fingers if it has the 4K video capability, especially if it can do it at 60 frames per second. I'll be really excited about that.
Cool.
So there's something I'm looking forward to. I like to make my own videos.
Yup, in 4K.
Yeah, that would be incredible. I can do it on my phone, but the 4K on this phone is not quite as exciting. I mean, it's good, but a real camera is a different thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because the lenses, of course, and the sensor. One other thing from Gary. Gary recently listened to a recording of an Everly Brothers concert on DVD. The disc included 3 audio options: Dolby Digital Stereo, Dolby Digital 5.1, and DTS Surround. He tried all 3, and he thought the vocals sounded louder and better, and that there was an overall better balance to the sound on the stereo track versus either of the surround sound options. Is that just due to different mastering for each audio option? Probably. Have we ever had any similar experiences when playing concert discs? Not specifically concert discs, but yes, the mastering is always what does it. There's no reason it has to sound vocally better and louder just because it's in stereo. It's definitely how somebody mixed it for that particular mix.
Yeah, they're not just taking the surround sound mix and down mixing it to 2-channel. That's not what they're doing.
Right.
They do have separate masters for the stereo track versus the surround sound track. In fact, all 3 of those likely had different mastering. So even the Dolby Digital 5.1 versus the DTS surround probably sound somewhat different here and there. Yeah, I've had similar experiences. The John Mayer concert, Blu-ray. I preferred the stereo track on that. Similar thing. I didn't think the surround sound mix was like you mentioned. It was sort of the balance of the sound. Certain things stuck out more in the surround sound mix that didn't quite seem natural. Whereas it was the reverse on the Chris Body and Boston disc. There, it had a Dolby True HD 7.1 soundtrack that is phenomenal, and I thought it was better in that one than the stereo version that was also on the disc. So yeah, similar.
I don't really have time to quickly look it up, but one of the best concerts I've ever heard on a high definition broadcast in 5.1 was a Duran Duran concert a few years back.
Okay, yeah, I think I've.
Was it Wembley in London?
I'm not certain, but I think.
I think so, and it's just it was just phenomenal. They sounded good too. I just kind of like them. Anyway, there's my opinion. Moving on now to Josh S. Josh has found the online explanations of what HEOS, H-E-O-S, does to be confusing. He thought HEOS was basically just Denon's version of Sonos. You put HEOS speakers in different rooms of your house, and then you use an app on your phone or tablet to stream music to them. So HEOS is an AV receiver. In an AV receiver is basically just another HEOS speaker that you could stream music to. But then he's seen and heard about adding wireless speakers to the AV receiver. Is this something HEOS allows? Using HEOS wireless speakers as your surrounds and surround backs?
I can see how you'd be confused.
Yeah.
So your first thought of it basically being Denon's version of Sonos, that's pretty much spot on. It's about whole house audio, wireless whole house audio through your Wi-Fi network. That's what it's about. Now, the one little wrinkle is that your Denon AV receiver or your Marantz AV receiver with HEOS can be both a target, like it's a playback device on the HEOS system, exactly like you described. You choose a source on your smartphone or tablet and play it to your HEOS AV receiver, but the AV receiver can also be a source itself. In other words, an external device that is connected to the AV receiver or one of the streaming services that's built into the AV receiver.
Right.
That can be the source of content for other HEOS devices on your network. So you could have your cable box. It has to be sending out stereo. The source device has to be sending out stereo. So that's a caveat. But let's say your cable box, you send stereo from your cable box into your HEOS AV receiver. And then that audio could be played in other rooms of your house through other wireless HEOS speakers. So it's a little bit more than what Sonos is doing most of the time. Okay. You can have your Sonos Connect device, which would be a similar thing. You plug an external source into your Sonos Connect, and now that becomes a source for all your other Sonos speakers. So that is correct. Could you take any AV receiver that has HEOS built in and add HEOS speakers as wireless surrounds and surround backs? No.
No, that's not what it is.
No. The confusion you have is there is a specific AV receiver from Denon called the HEOS AVR. All right, so that's a specific model. It's the HEOS AVR. And that is limited to 5.1. It can't do 7.1. It can't do Atmos. It's limited to 5.1, but that one allows you to have 3 wired speakers for your front, left, center, and right, plus any pair of HEOS wireless speakers as its surrounds.
So just that one model of receiver from them does the thing he was thinking that they might all do.
Yeah.
That is confusing. Yes.
Yeah, it's only that specific, the one that's actually called the HEOS AVR, and it's limited to 5.1. So there's no wireless surround backs, but you can have wireless surrounds. So
if you bought HEOS speakers to use as previously described, could you then make them into surround back speakers?
No, because it can't process any more than 5.1.
Right. No. So
that's all it can do.
Right. Okay. There we go. Moving on, he has more questions. He's been trying to study up on HDMI 2.1, and he's trying to figure out how the new eARC feature is meant to work. Some people are saying the idea is for your TV to become the hub of your system rather than your AV receiver. Plug all your sources directly into the TV, then eARC can send full lossless and immersive audio to just a single HDMI eARC input on an AV receiver. That's audio return channel, right?
Yeah, so that's the enhanced audio return channel.
eARC.
Yes.
Little e, big arc. Do we think this is what the HDMI people had in mind? I don't think the HDMI people had a lot in mind. I think they just made a cable and said, what kind of wires? What? That'll do. Josh thinks it might be useful for sound bars in particular. But could eARC maybe mean not having to worry so much about whether or not your AV receiver will be able to pass through the newest video formats or HDMI versions? Sure, you'll have to upgrade your TV, but then eARC could send out the audio without you having to keep upgrading your receiver too. Would the AVR makers even allow this to happen? Would they allow it? Well, they got armies? They can't do anything about it if that was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, if Sony decides they want to make a TV that can do this, it's pretty hard for Denon to stop them.
Yeah, there's not going to be, massive wars.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea because I mean, eARC doesn't exist in a product you can buy yet, so we don't actually know now what eARC is for sure. The absolute we know this is why they have eARC is for ATSC 3.0 that's coming up. Okay. That's going to be our 4K television broadcasts with Dolby AC4 audio, which is the new audio format which can include Atmos in it. And they're like, we need a new audio transmission that will be able to handle AC4. Because the old connection format's your optical toslink format, right, and the old version of audio return channel, they don't have the bandwidth to support AC4. So you needed something, and this was it. That is 100% what we know for sure it was about, which is you're going to buy new TVs that have ATSC 3.0 tuners in them. You connect an antenna to those. You get your broadcasts over the air. How are you going to get the AC4 audio? eARC. That's the answer. So that much we know. It's also hopefully one day streaming services that are built into the TV will start using lossless audio. Because right now the existing audio return channel can already send Dolby Digital Plus, which means you can get Atmos. It's just the lossy version of Atmos, not the lossless version of Atmos. So hopefully they'll start doing lossless audio at some point, and then eARC will be a way to get that out of your television.
Sure, that'd be fine. But the idea of using the TV as like a hub for your system makes no sense because then you got all these wires going up to the TV, and it's just impractical, and then you'd end up with a breakout box, and then you'd pretty much have a receiver.
Well, I mean, like Josh says, that's kind of how soundbars already work. You plug all your sources into the TV, and then you have one audio connection from the TV to your soundbar. So, yeah.
Well, if you just have a couple of things, if you've got a cable box and a Blu-ray and maybe even like a game device, just a few things, okay, I can kind of see it. But as soon as you get to like object number 4 and 5 and 6, that's too much. I'm not running that many wires to the TV. It kind of defeats the whole point of how we figured out how to do this. Your
but the
TV
other thing is
alone on the wall.
I don't know for certain that, look, so let's say you have an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. It's sending out lossless Atmos.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, I mean, technically there should be a way to do this, but I don't know if you plug that directly into your TV, if eARC will then pass it through.
Oh. Right.
I mean, it should be possible, but I don't know if that's actually what they're going to do or not.
Yeah.
Because passing it through is a separate step versus just accepting the signal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know.
I
but
guarantee you this eARC is just, it only got created hastily because of the new ATSC standard, and they want to make sure that televisions can still be standalone televisions that receive signals out of the air, and then you get audio out of your TV. They just want to make sure that's still a thing that can happen.
But it's an interesting point, because I mean, we have had all this stuff. You bought an AV receiver, it doesn't pass Dolby Vision, and never will. Bought an AV receiver, doesn't have HDCP 2.2, and never will.
Right.
That's all video stuff. It could still have, you had AV receivers that could do Atmos, they just couldn't do Dolby Vision, right?
Right.
That's a thing that exists. So could you have a television where, okay, the TV does Dolby Vision, the TV has eARC, therefore you could plug your source into the television and it will just send only the audio out back to your AV receiver that does understand the audio, just not the video part, and you don't have to upgrade your AV receiver. That's a maybe. If the pass-through works, which I don't know, it's not guaranteed that it will, but if it does, yeah, maybe so.
I'll tell you, in the future, I'd like to hear a segment on this podcast about future predictions of this ATSC upgrade because I'm like, really, we're going to do it again?
We're going to do it again. It's not mandatory this time, though. It's optional for the broadcasters.
Yeah, it's pretty traumatic. I doubt very many broadcasters will do it. It just...
They're trying to incentivize them.
Yeah, we'll see. Next questioner, Boschko. Boschko asks, what do balanced inputs and outputs on an AV receiver or pre-pro actually do differently from the standard RCA inputs and outputs? What makes them so special? What does balanced actually mean? And I can tell you from radio experience and this big XLR connector right here on this microphone that it's about eliminating noise. Mostly. That's,
in the cable itself, let's be clear. In the cable itself.
Now,
so what does balanced actually mean? Okay, so imagine you have a signal, a normal signal, it's going up and down, and then you duplicate that signal, but the duplicate you then invert. So now you send both of those signals, the original signal plus the duplicated and inverted signal.
Yeah.
You send both of them down the wire, and then on the other end, you take the inverted one and you invert it again so it's back to original, and then combine it with the original signal. That's what a balanced connection does. Why would you do that? Because any noise that's picked up in that transmission...
It nulls it out, basically, right?
Yeah, one of them was... So you have the exact same noise being added to the signal, but in one of the signals, it gets flipped over. It gets inverted when it reaches the other end. So now you have perfectly polar opposite noise on those two things, which means it cancels out.
There you go.
This is very beneficial in very long cable runs that do pick up noise. It's for real. This is why at a concert venue, at a stadium, you want to run balanced cables. You got hundreds of feet, and it is picking up noise. So it totally makes sense. In your home, when you're dealing with probably 6 feet, maybe 20, maybe 50 feet at the most, probably, right? Totally unnecessary. It's just not necessary.
There you go.
Are you going to hear a difference? Are you going to consider an upgrade going to balanced versus RCA? No. Well, you might think so at first because since the signal was duplicated, inverted, and then inverted and smushed back together, you do get a boost in the signal. It's louder. So that might make you think it sounds better because it's louder. But if you level match them, they're exactly the same.
There you go. So don't get too excited. Don't get too excited about it.
No,
it's not necessary with good quality RCA cables. You're fine.
Yeah, make sure you're using a shielded RCA cable so that it's rejecting the noise. But for the length of cable runs we're using in a home, it's just not going to make a difference.
There you go. Now, he asks a very fundamental question, which I think is neat that someone is asking this. What is actually different between analog and digital? Now, does he mean literally, I can explain the difference between those two words and how they apply, or does he mean the quality difference? But in either case, you know, analog is a direct representation of the sound you started with. It is in some way, it's trying to mirror image the wave that came into the wire in the first place.
It is a waveform that is analogous to the original sound.
There you go.
That's where the term comes from. Right. So the sound in the air is a vibration. It's a vibration, but it's a vibration with varying frequencies and amplitudes.
Right. It is a moving thing.
So the signal that you're going to send down a wire is not a vibration of the air.
Right.
But it is a waveform with varying frequency and amplitude. And those the variation in the frequency and the amplitude are analogous to the original vibrations in the air.
So in other words, the waves in the air as I speak are represented in, for instance, the groove that the needle hits on a record.
That's right.
They should have, if they're working perfectly, they should have the same shape or the same amplitude at the same moments.
Yeah, it's the same variations in frequency and amplitude.
Right. So an analog is a literal wave either drawn onto something or imprinted in magnetic particles. It's the actual waveform. Digital is data that is put through mathematical algorithms to get back that waveform. Essentially. So you measure that waveform, turn it into math, and then you can do stuff with the math without messing it up. And then you turn it back into that waveform when you want to send it to your ears.
Yeah, the digital we're using is binary. So the wave, because it is a wave still, but the wave that's transmitted down a cable, say, all that matters is high and low. There is no variation in frequency. The same frequency is being sent all the time.
Right.
There could be a difference in amplitude, but we don't care. All we care is high and low. That's our binary. 1, 0, on, off, high or low. So there's a wave going through your digital cable, but it's just the exact same frequency all the time, and the amplitude we don't care about. We only care if there's a difference.
Yeah, the signal going down a digital wire, or the song that you record digitally onto a computer, those are all zillions of data points.
Yeah.
That get turned back into what you need to hear later.
You call a high a 1, you call a 0 a low a 0, and that's your binary. 0, 1, 0, 1, and you get a code. You get a code of zeros and ones. That's what you get. And why is this beneficial? Well, because the amplitude does change due to interferences, due to losses in the cable. Whatever it is, the amplitude can change, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how much the amplitude changes. It doesn't affect the input versus the output. The input of 1s and 0s is exactly the same as the output of 1s and 0s, even if the waveform gets corrupted in the middle.
That's right.
That's a very beneficial thing. In analog, what happens if you corrupt the amplitude? You've corrupted the signal. What came out is different than what went in. Digital could be corrupted in the middle, but, I shouldn't say corrupted, but altered. Could be altered. As long as it isn't altered so much that it's unrecognizable as a high or a low.
Right.
You get the exact same thing in and out. So digital, we're sampling. We're looking at an analog waveform.
Yeah, you're measuring it.
And we say, okay, we pick a frequency. And in CD audio, it's 44.1 kilohertz, 44.1 thousand times a second. Right. It could be more. It could be 96,000 times a second. But whatever it is, we look at the signal that many times a second, and we then use a code, a 16-bit, a 16 sequence of 16 ones and zeros, or 24 ones and zeros, whatever it is. That's a code to describe the amplitude of the original wave at that point. We send that down a digital wire. It gets reconstructed at the other end exactly the same as what was put into it at the beginning. That's the difference between digital and analog. So why quality difference could one sound? Well, analog could quite easily sound different at the output than at the input. It's pretty easy for that to happen.
I've had it happen, yes.
Whereas digital, it's kind of all or nothing.
Yeah, you either get the signal perfectly or you don't get the signal.
It's either perfect or it's not.
That's the beauty of it.
There's no gray area.
It either works
or doesn't. It's either like completely wrong or perfect. Right. One or the other.
That's why if people try to sell you expensive digital cables, either the signal gets through the cable or it doesn't.
Yes.
Digitally. And so
that's right.
You don't get enhanced digital transfer.
No, there's no better digital. There's digital that fails. That can exist.
Like that's bad. It's really hard to tell you all the reasons why digital is so much better. Because it gets super duper technical. Boy, it just goes on forever. But I think the safest way to look at it is, digital is measurements that have been taken. Those measurements are used to recreate the curve afterwards. And it works perfectly. It's wonderful. Or
not at all.
Or not at all. Yeah. Most of the time it's perfect. Every once in a while, not at all. Whereas analog sound is trying to recreate that waveform in some other medium. The grooves of a record or magnetic particles. And so many things can go wrong. Yes. And so many ways can be interfered with and degraded and so forth. So that's the difference. But that you could do a whole podcast.
Sure.
For weeks on end.
But let's not. Let's move on.
Okay, so after asking that very deep, big fundamental question, he says his receiver has both analog and digital inputs. Would it be called an analog receiver, a digital receiver, or both? He's seen some receivers and pre-pros labeled as all analog or analog only. Does that mean they really don't have any digital inputs at all? That's exactly what it means.
That is exactly what it means. An example of that might be Emotiva's, XSP1, XSP1. But that is an all analog AV receiver. It has no digital inputs on it whatsoever.
And I'll just go ahead and admit I'm just gonna make fun of you if you think that's better. I'm sorry. I apologize. There are people out there who are like, "Oh, I hate digital. It's so harsh."
Would yours, with its analog and digital inputs, be an analog or a digital receiver? It's both.
It is both.
It's both.
Yeah.
However, some have no method of taking the analog signal, putting it through its preamplifier stage, then to its amplifier stage, without converting it to digital at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that's the case, it is a digital receiver.
Sure. Okay.
Even if the input is analog, if there is no way to avoid converting it into digital at some point, it is a digital receiver. Yeah. But most AV receivers from large brands, particularly if it has 7.1 or 5.1 analog inputs, very often those don't let you convert it to digital at any point, which is not, in my opinion, not great, because then you can't use any of your bass management, you can't use any of your room correction, you can't use your tone controls, you can't apply up mixing to it, you can't do anything, because all of those things require you to turn it into a digital signal. Yeah. So you'll see the ones where it is straight through, and that tells you that's straight through. That's analog all the way, because I wasn't able to convert it to digital. But on some of them, the volume control is digital. So at that point, it's a digital receiver. Right.
My newer receiver is like that. My older one is not. You can run straight through analog if you want to. If it, and hey, if you like it, buy it and enjoy it.
Sure.
But don't be afraid of something digital. It's not better because
there's things you
analog.
can't do analog.
Right. It's not better one way or the other, but digital does avoid noise better. If he were to use the analog inputs on his receiver, how would they be different from the inputs on an analog-only receiver? Well, again, like Rob just said, if your receiver converts everything to digital in order to process it, then that would be a difference. Whether or not you could hear it is a different topic. And a lot of arguments are had. So that's how it would be different. Otherwise, if you have analog pass through straight to the amplifiers and out your speakers, it theoretically would be exactly the same as an analog only receiver. Theoretically.
That's right.
But electronics are different. You have different character of sound and amplifiers a little bit, but mostly it'd be the same. His receiver is the Onkyo TX-RZ810. And we previously said that we think it has a good power supply and good amps, but we still didn't like it.
I don't recall actually saying I didn't like it. I think I said there are receivers I prefer over it, which is not the same thing as not liking it.
I got you. He asked, is that strictly because it doesn't have Odyssey, or is there something else about it that we think is unimpressive? What would we suggest for around 900 Canadian instead, and why? So he feels personally slighted with his wonderful Onkyo TX-RZ810. Nothing wrong with it. It's just not preferred by Rob over other models if you were making a decision. If you own it and you're enjoying it, it is a great receiver.
Yeah, like I say, it has very good amps and a good power supply, which are the most important things in an AV
truly
receiver.
Is, yes.
Honestly, Odyssey is a big part of it. I don't like Onkyo's Accu EQ. I don't like it. I might use it to set my distances and levels, but then I would turn it off after having done that.
I see.
Whereas I will keep Odyssey active. So that is a big part of it. The other thing, it's a quibble, but I don't like that it has 7 HDMI inputs in the back and only 3 of them accept HDCP 2.2. You know, I prefer that all 7 of them do, but you know what?
Odd. Why not do them all? Okay.
Different HDMI boards, you know, 2 separate
Saving
boards.
10 cents.
But that's a very minor quibble. Other than that, I mean, why do I prefer, say, what I'm going to recommend to you, which is in Canada, $900. If you go to Gibby's Electronic Superstore, they have B-stock, same thing as refurbished. B-stock directly from Denon, comes out of the Denon factory, $900. You can get the X4300H.
There you go.
Now, that can do up to 11 speaker processing. It can power 9 speakers itself. It can process 11 speakers. Your RZ810 tops out at 7 maximum, so that's a significant feature difference.
There you go.
It's got Odyssey Multi-Q XT32, which I prefer vastly over Accu EQ. It's got 8 HDMI inputs that all do HDCP 2.2 and Dolby Vision pass-through. So, for the same price, a whole lot more features. That's why I would recommend it over it. Now, does that mean I don't like the RZ810? No, it doesn't mean I don't like it. It just means I prefer the X4300H for the same price.
Yes, you have not made a bad decision in owning that Onkyo, not at all. So he's got a few more questions, then I might need to wrap it up looking at the time here.
Sounds good.
All right, let's see. He also says, what do we think about Monoprice's $125 25-watt 2-channel tube amp with Bluetooth? Bluetooth is digital, right? Yes. Is there a point to buying a tube amp just to listen to digital music files? No.
So
did everybody hear that? Did everybody hear my opinion on that?
we should be very clear here. The amplifiers built into that particular unit are actually Class AB.
Yeah.
They are solid state. They're not tube amplifiers. The tubes that you see on the front of the thing, you can plainly see the tubes there. That's actually strictly for the pre-amplifier stage. That is strictly about voltage gain, which they honestly should be able to do very, very well. There's no reason why tubes shouldn't be able to do that exceedingly well.
But is there a point to buying a tube amp just to listen to digital music files?
It looks prettier.
It's really cool looking, I'll give you that. But you could put some cool LEDs on some other receiver and design whatever you wanted to.
No, and over time, those tubes will degrade and alter the sound in a purely distortion manner.
Right.
Whereas solid state won't. So there is one day going to be a downside to having a tube preamplifier. At the beginning of it, there is really nothing beneficial about it other than aesthetics.
Yeah.
For the Monoprice has some marketing stuff in there saying, oh, this will add back the warmth that digital takes away. You could do that with a tone control. It's really not hard. You throw in some second order harmonics. There you go. There's your tube sound.
And I've come to hate the word warmth.
It's a catch-all.
I hate it.
Silly thing.
It's just people going, harsh and warm and smooth.
But if you think it looks cool, go ahead.
It does
look
cool.
As a preamplifier, those tubes should work fantastically well.
Yeah.
And it'll be years before they start to degrade.
Again, nothing wrong with it. Just there's not a benefit to it having tubes other than it's just neato. So there you go.
Looks cool.
He has an external USB hard drive, and he'd like to use it to store movie files. But what is the best audio format that can be sent via USB? Is there a limitation, or is full Atmos and DTS-X possible? I think that might be a misunderstanding of how that signal is coming through. If you have, for instance, a USB 3.0, you have a data rate that is fast enough to send anything. So it's not that it's not like with an HDMI cable where there is a spec where you can't send this or that. USB is just data transfer, and if your drive and your connection is fast enough, which I think it even is on a USB 2.0 connection, right?
Yeah, I've used USB 2.0. Well, certainly for the audio side of it. And once you start getting into 60 frames per second 4K video, maybe USB 2.0 would start to struggle.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I think it'd still have it just fine. So generally, yeah, you can transfer anything over USB because it's just the whole file is transferred across, and there's plenty of data rate bandwidth there. Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, the video and audio are thrown into a container.
Yeah.
So really all that matters is what container is then stored on that hard drive, and do you have the software to play it back? That's kind of the question. Now, could be Plex, could be Kodi, could be JRiver, could be VLC. Any number of things can play back full, lossless, Atmos, and DTS-X.
Yes, absolutely. And I've run into a problem using an old PS3 wirelessly to play movies onto my television. And because it only had wireless G, and that is not enough data rate to play
for like full 1080p with full lossless audio.
Depending on the compression and so that's a problem. But no, just a USB cable, man, you can play anything off that hard drive.
Yeah, I mean, if it's movie backups, they're probably going to be MKVs. MKV is the container. MKV can completely store 1080p or 4K video with full lossless Atmos and DTS-X. You can easily make that off of a physical disk with the program Make MKV. So you'll end up with a MKV file that can do that as long as you have the software on whatever that USB hard drive is attached to. Maybe it's an NVIDIA Shield. Could easily do this.
That's right. All right, so he's got one more question. Reaching time here. The SVS PB12-NSD subwoofer that was on sale over the holidays. What's the difference between that model and the regular 12-inch ported model that's part of their usual lineup, the PB2000? Is it really $500 versus $800 for just a little bit lower watts and like 1 hertz less extension?
I mean, essentially, yes. The PB2000 is the direct replacement for the PB12-NSD.
Okay.
So every so often, pretty much all manufacturers refresh their lineups at some point. So you used to have the PB12-NSD, you had the PB12 Plus, and you had the PB13 Ultra. And now we have the PB2000, we still have the PB12 Plus, and then we have the PB4000, which has now replaced the PB13 Ultra.
Sure.
So with the PB2000 and the PB4000 replacing the previous models, they made some upgrades, a little bit, you know, new driver, new amp, maybe a different cabinet design, but, you know, the idea was they're still aiming for a certain price point. They're just using a little bit more modern design and components, so maybe they eked out a little bit more performance at the exact same price point. That's what they're aiming to do, but they're much more similar than they are different. Why is the PB12-NSD available for $500? Well, because they're selling them out.
Because they're moving on. New model.
They're getting rid of all remaining stock that they had because now they're manufacturing the PB2000. They're not manufacturing the PB12-NSD anymore. So you get the benefit of a clearance discount. Yeah. Hooray.
That's a very good deal. So the answer is, yeah, that's all it is.
Oh, yeah. If you were looking at a PB2000 and you can still get a PB12-NSD for $500, jump on that because they're not going to be around for much longer.
Yeah, I'd rather have a couple of those for $500 each than to just be able to afford one at $800. So yeah, that's it. It's always sometimes deals are actually just good deals.
That's right.
Just take advantage of it.
For sure. So we have Marc and Chris still left on our topic list here. Marc's question is quite involved and long, so Tom and I will dig into that next week. Yeah,
it'll be the Marc H podcast next week.
That's right. Tyson, we've received your question, and we'll get to it next week. His came in like late Sunday night, so shouldn't be too much of a shock. Lee, thank you so much for filling in. It wasn't ridiculously short notice.
No, this time I had about 24 hours, but I had some things that had to happen in there. And also last night I spent about 2 hours fighting with my computer. I put a new sound card in it, trying to avoid, you know, the noise that I have described to you before that I get on analog inputs on my computer. The new sound card did exactly the same thing. So the noise is coming from my video card. So I've got a lot more experimental process to do. Swap out video cards. I'm going to find this damn noise and I'm going to refresh everything in this stupid office studio that's making noises. I've got a compressor over here that itself makes noise, not in the audio signal, but in the air. Like the power supply buzzes. And if I press on it, I have a heavy hard drive sitting on it right now. And it's making it quieter. I just have nutty. So anyway, yeah, so I'm not like super prepared for today, but it's been fun. I always love to be a part of this. You know I do, and I try to jump on it when I can. I think you guys asked me, was it last week or something, or the week before, when it was like, didn't Tom call me with like 30 minutes of warning or something? And he was like,
yeah, you did. Yeah.
He's like, hey, can you do the podcast now? What, now? Like run in there and turn on the mic? Nah, not really. But I always try to do this when I can. I don't mind. It's so much fun.
Well, we appreciate having you here.
And my best to Tom. Hopefully he's feeling good. I was sick about a week ago or so too.
Hopefully everybody in his house is feeling better. We probably wouldn't be able to answer your specific computer-related questions, but we do try to answer the questions that are sent to us, and you can do so at question@avrant.com. That's the email address to send your questions to. If you need our contact information, it's at the beginning of the podcast. That's just kind of the way we're doing it now. We do want to thank our listeners of the week, though. So that's this week. I don't have the list of PayPal donors. There might have been some, but Tom is the only person who sees that.
Oh,
so can't say those names, but if you donated this previous week, we will certainly mention you next week when Tom is very hopefully back. But Patreon, we've got our 53 patrons at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Huge thanks to all our Patreon supporters. And Alex P., congrats on that shopping spree, dude. And thanks for mentioning us to Accessories for Less, SVS, Silver Ticket, and Acoustimac. That's awesome. Really appreciate that. So, yes, on behalf of Tom Andry, I am Rob H.
And I'm Lee Overstreet. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.